Anyway, popular Fortnite gamer, Raul Zito accusing... I hope someone beats the shit out of him.
My brand new book, The Authoritarian...
You guys really want me to watch... You guys really want me to watch this Ben Shapiro video? Titled, Shapiro Reacts, Simone Biles Drops Out of Olympics. Okay, let's see what can we be outraged about today?
This week,
we're pretty bored, so
today. I think it's really important.
See what we could be upset about.
All of the major institutions of American society have now been taken over and weaponized by the left against dissent. It's not just about how
I'm pretty sure that Ben Shapiro's sitting on a booster seat because he looks taller than usual.
Did it. It's about how we take those institutions back. Check out the link in the description below and get a copy of The Authoritarian Moment. Is Simone Biles a hero or is she a villain? These apparently are the only two sides you can take in the ongoing Simone Biles controversy. So apparently, what happened with Simone Biles, according to the New York Times?
For 2 months. Hey, how are you doing?
Not bad, man. How you doing?
Simone Biles lost her way midair while vaulting in the women's team final in the Olympics on Tuesday, then suddenly exited the competition, saying she wasn't mentally prepared to compete. Okay. Biles' absence created a bigger opening for the Russians, who won the gold.
Okay.
Apparently, she started propelling herself in the air, and then she sort of got lost in the air, and she ended up landing on her feet, but she was completely lost in the air. Minutes later, USA Gymnastics confirmed Biles had withdrawn from the competition, leaving the U.S. without its highest-scoring gymnast. Biles said, "I just felt like it would be a bit better to take a back seat and work on my mindfulness. I didn't want to risk the team a medal for kind of my screw-ups because they've worked way too hard for that." And it really did hurt the team. I mean, like her vault was really, really bad for the team. And probably because of that, the team was denied the gold. So her case was, I lost it. I wanted to exit before I lost it worse. And then everybody missed out on the silver. Here was Simone Biles describing her withdrawal from the Olympics. Of course, she is widely considered the greatest gymnast of all time because she's done things in competition that nobody else has even attempted.
To focus on my well-being, and there's more to life than just gymnastics, and it is very unfortunate that it has to happen at this stage because I definitely want to miss the Olympics go
Thank God the audio is so good in this.
a bit better.
Put mental health first, because if you don't, then you're not going to enjoy your sport and you're not going to succeed as much as you want to. So it's okay sometimes to even sit out the big competitions to focus on yourself, because it shows how strong of a competitor and person that you really are.
It sounds like she's trying to convince herself. Listen, here's the thing, right? I understand mental health and having to sit out. I get it. I do. And she's a big athlete, apparently one of the best or the best in the world or whatever. So it makes sense that she's under a lot of pressure. From like a personal perspective, though, and it is her choice, absolutely, I would think it's a bit shameful to like step out of a competition in the middle of a competition and let your teammates down, right? That's kind of shitty. Sometimes you need to sacrifice yourself a bit for the people around you, especially in a team setting. And I think that like if she was gonna sit out, to me it would make sense to sit out before she entered the competition. Does that make sense? Like if she had sat out before and said, I'm not going to do it this year, and they had gotten someone else to replace her, that is totally fair. But she said she was going to do a thing, and then she didn't do a thing. And I kind of feel like that's shitty. Like, hey, I promised to do something, and then breaking your promise because of mental health. I get it. I understand mental health is stressful, and I'm not saying that like her mental health isn't a factor. But when it comes down to a part of being an adult and part of being responsible is like following through on promises that you make. And that's something that part is shitty. And I don't think that she should be like considered a hero in any capacity. I think that we can understand, but also I look down on her for that. She could have dropped out beforehand. Her other team has won golds. That's great. That's great. I don't know. Is this a team event? Am I just fucking dumb? She got like a bronze or something. All I'm saying is that she should have dropped out beforehand because she's like letting down her team, and then she's also kind of letting America down here. It would have been better if she had just like dropped out of the event beforehand so they could replace her. Totally fine. Once you make a promise, I feel like you should follow through on that promise. Yeah. And here's the thing, because you say mental health, and like it is quite possible that her mental health was so bad that she wouldn't be able to compete. That is fair if that was communicated, but it seems more like she had a little bit of an off day, and then she's like, hey, I'm gonna take a breather. You know what I mean? Because sometimes mental health can really get in the way and like actually cause you like legitimate harm. And it seemed like it impacted one of her like movements or whatever, one of her competitions or one of her events. I'm just saying, I feel like from energy I'm getting from it secondhand or after the fact, it seems more like she's just like, she dropped out because she wasn't feeling it. And then she's trying to convince herself that it's okay that she dropped out because she wasn't feeling it, instead of feeling bad for, like, you know, skirting on a responsibility.
Okay, well, that last part where it's okay to sit out the big competitions, to focus in on who you are and your mindfulness. What you should have said is, I was suffering aerial disorientation. I lost my ability to know where I was in the air, and that's dangerous, right? That would actually be understandable, but the way that she is.
That's fair. Yeah, that makes sense. That's somewhat what I was saying before. Is that like, oh, there's something that's like physically stopping me from like, maybe my mental health is physically stopping me from being able to compete. That makes sense. But when you kind of go on this like, oh, I think it's okay to sit back for mental health, sometimes it's really not. Sometimes you just have to nut up and do your shit.
Is phrasing that obviously is not super understandable. That I lost, and my mindfulness was lost, and you need to sit out and take care of who you are. Okay, so a couple of things. So some people on the right have been blasting Simone Biles, including people I'm friends with. You know, Clay Travis, for example, has been going after Simone Biles and saying, you know, she choked here. And by the way, by any sports standard, she did. Right? She's a competitor. Every competitor in sport and every other area of life is a competitor and also a person. So you can understand where they're coming from personally if they withdraw from a competition. But it is fair to say that if LeBron James were in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and after quarter one, he said, you know what, I just don't have it today. I don't have it. I'm out. I'm going to leave this team. They're on their own. People would say, like, whoa, that is a massive choke by LaFleur, right? That would have been the way that people treated it. Male athletes aren't treated this way. If Tom Brady did that in the Super Bowl, he threw a couple interceptions in the first quarter. He said, okay, I'm throwing it to my backup.
You know, honestly, I feel like there's a difference between can we watch her compete? I guess we're not going to be able to watch her compete, whatever. I feel like there's a difference between basketball and like fucking whatever the fuck sport she does. So you know, like her sport is obviously much more intricate than basketball. You know what I mean? So if like, you fuck up in playing basketball, you're just gonna have a shitty game. If you fuck up doing what she's doing, you could like legitimately hurt yourself. An air vault sounds pretty complicated and technical, and that she could get like very hurt.
Everybody would be like, wow, that is a massive all-time pull-out choke. Okay, now, what she was doing here is, if she was trying to preserve her own health, like if this was actually dangerous, that is a different thing. But it doesn't make you a hero for pulling out. And this is why you are seeing people bouncing off each other with regard to Simone Biles. So on the one side, you have people saying, well, she's not a hero. And on the other side, they're saying, well, she's not a villain. And the answer is kind of somewhere in between. You're right. She's not a hero, and she's also not a villain. Heroes.
Oh my God, what the fuck are you talking about? Who plays football? LeBron James? We're talking about Simone Biles versus LeBron James. Who plays football, baby? Who are you talking about? My girlfriend's in the chat. She just said he plays football, you goose. We call each other goose, you know, a silly goose all the time. I'm just a little confused.
A Fox News host called, or a Fox Sports host named Doug Gottlieb going after Biles yesterday.
If we're okay with Simone Biles saying, hey, couldn't go tonight, mental health, we can be okay if LeBron says the same thing? She's the greatest gymnast going. He's the greatest basketball player.
Oh, he said Tom Brady. I don't know.
Why do we have sympathy for Simone Biles, but we wouldn't have sympathy or empathy for LeBron James? It's called a double standard, right? And you get people saying like, man, this Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, they take so much abuse on social media. No, they don't.
Okay, so when it comes...
Well, yeah, LeBron James, I would say, honestly, has an easier job than Simone Biles. Because, like, Simone Biles does flips in the air. I'm not saying LeBron isn't a great athlete. I'm just saying that there's a difference between running around and dribbling a ball and doing fucking flips in the air. Like, objectively speaking, one is more technical. It's more technical to be a gymnast than it is to be a basketball player. And so, like, again, I think that she should have went through with it based on the context that I'm seeing. But, like, she has a more demanding thing or situation. And, like, if you're not in the correct headspace, that could be life and death. To me, you could really fuck your shit up, you know? They do land on a mat. You could still hurt yourself landing on a mat.
comes to the sort of bravery point, it is amazing how, again, bravery has shifted. Bravery is now authenticity. You're the bravest person.
Who's saying
not
Simone
if you do
Biles is
something
brave?
for your teammates, not if you do something for your country.
Maybe somebody did, but I haven't heard anybody say that Simone Biles is brave.
Bravest if you find yourself, if you find your inner peace. That is true bravery. Bravery and decency, all of it lies in authenticity. Well, that is not a real standard for bravery.
Can you just show us that?
And again, this doesn't mean she's a villain, but it also doesn't mean she's a hero. And yet the media insists on treating Simone Biles pulling out in the same way they treated Naomi Osaka pulling out of the French Open. This is an act of heroism. No, it isn't. Can it just be something that human beings do without it being valorized and treated as an act of heroism? Can we just...
I get what Jen's saying. I don't necessarily disagree. But I think that the thing that's being championed as like heroistic, is that a word? I don't know. I don't care. The thing that's being championed is that somebody's taking a step back for their mental health instead of allowing like the pressures to collapse them. So it's like a focus on mental health, and that in that regard, it's a positive message to people to make sure you do focus on mental health. But I also think that like it's a bit of a weakness because, again, I do feel like unless that mental health issue would have impacted you immediately, you should have went through with it and just like, that's how life is. You make a promise and you follow through with it. And she doesn't seem like the kind of person that's mentally distressed to a point where like she couldn't perform. I could also be wrong, but it kind of seems like she dodged out on it and she's just using mental health as like, I just have I'm feeling a little stressed. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's kind of a cop-out.
do that? Like, why is in between such a bad...
I feel like the fact that this is a major conversation is ridiculous. You got a good point, Mama God. You actually have a very good point.
Place to be for most human beings. There are a couple of opinion pieces that have decided that it is not merely just a thing that Simone Biles dropped out of the Olympics. She's heroic for having dropped out of the Olympics. And this is the part I really don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, hurry up.
You have a piece from Lindsay Krause in the New York Times titled, Simone Biles Doesn't Need a Gold Medal to Win. Well, again, she pulled out of a team competition as the highest scoring gymnast in history. So I'm not sure how
that second part doesn't matter. The pulling out is what matters. She could have sat out as long as they were able to get a replacement, and it wouldn't have mattered at all.
We have a different definition of winning now. Quote, as we head into the 2021 Olympics, I have often recalled being a 12-year-old watching the American Olympic gymnasts at the 1996 Atlanta Games vault and soar and flip their way to victory. Those girls were just a little older than me, but they were so small you could see their muscles moving under their skin. I regarded them with awe, but thinking of them now, I also cringe. They were hurting themselves as America cheered. Dominique Moceanu later said she was often limited to 900 calories a day during competition.
Kind of true.
She competed in Atlanta on a fractured tibia. Carrie Strug struck her celebrated vault on a torn ankle. On the medal podium, the girls stood together solemnly like soldiers. The message to girls like me was clear. Being the best takes pain. Okay, why is that a terrible message? Like, that's very often true in sport. Like, that doesn't mean that you should have your daughter. Like, I wouldn't have my daughter living on 900 calories a day, but that does happen to be the case.
Wait, I don't understand. How do you have that perspective? It's like, well, like, I mean, actually listening to it, it makes me feel more, maybe Simone Biles has a point. That sounds worse than ever. So, like, you have these athletes that are literally like destroying themselves. And he's like, so what? But I wouldn't let my daughter do that. It's like, if you wouldn't let your daughter do something, then maybe it's not a good thing to let other people's daughters do. You know, like if you want to let your daughter destroy her body for the Olympics, like you do you, but I can understand it's a defensible position to be like, okay, maybe we could dial it back a little bit. Maybe it is a little more justifiable for Simone Biles to chill the fuck out. You know what I mean? This sounds horrible. Like if this is the case, I wouldn't want my daughter to be an Olympic athlete at all. This is horrible. I understand sacrificing for your country and all that, but you know, a lot of these people like are kids when they start training, and then it's like they're encouraged to have like this bizarre nationalism. Yeah, gymnast culture is terrible. It seems to be very exclusive to gymnast culture. Because you don't see this in other sports. I haven't seen it in other sports. You know? So,
athletes.
like, maybe there's just something. Maybe we need to start having more of a conversation about this sport, the gymnasts. Maybe we need to start having more conversations about Olympic gymnasts needing to be treated better.
Often undergo physical stress that normal people don't undergo, which is why their bodies are torn up by the time they're 35. Right? 35 is considered very old in athletic competition. That is considered very young in any other area of your career. This columnist says, gymnastics has historically been a showcase for a certain type of femininity. We reward girls who are small, pretty, and compliant, who smile disarmingly and don't complain while winning.
I suppose.
Well, I mean, what would we reward gymnasts for? Being large, non-mobile, and grumpy? That'd be weird.
Maybe.
Gymnastics
sounds,
sport
that sounds like me. I'll take a reward for that.
with abuse of all varieties has been a microcosm of what happens to extraordinary little girls when they grow up.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, aside from the physical practice, remember the sexual assault harassment thing. Yeah, like I think Larry Nassar, like I don't remember. I believe, did Larry Nassar work with Simone Biles? Because that could be part of her like trauma as well. Yeah, ballet culture is really bad too. Yeah, you know, it's very interesting. It seems like sports that are considered more feminine or female dominated seem to be like super shitty, like horrible. I don't know. That's so, yeah, maybe there's just like these really unrealistic standards here. I don't know. As I watch this, I'm becoming a little bit more like on the side of Simone Biles. I still think that you should kind of go through with the promise that you make, but I'm understanding more and more. I'm being a bit more empathetic towards her as we go through this, and everybody like shares experiences and we talk about this.
They get discarded.
The Olympics in general is ruled by outdated ideas, like the sports thing with the volleyball players, the shorts thing with volleyball. Oh yeah, you were talking about how they have to wear shorts so that you can see their asses. Yeah.
Again, all of this is in preparation for saying that Simone Biles is a hero for dropping out of competition, which again is a stretch. I like to imagine a 12-year-old at home today watching Simone Biles command the mat. Biles, the reigning U.S. national champion, arguably the greatest gymnast of all time, shows it doesn't have to be like this after all. In a sport where you can begin to age out by the time you're old enough to vote, Biles is 24 and at the top of her game. Her recent performances have been nothing short of astounding. With that status, Biles is forging a new model for one of America's most popular female sports, not as a prepubescent girl, but as an athletic young woman. She posts photos of pizza to her Instagram.
She's 24? What the fuck? I just registered that. This woman is 24? She looks like she's 16. What the fuck? That's like, I mean, like, the reason I'm bringing that up is because to me, it seems like she looks really young. And like the reason I'm bringing that up is because, like, look at how young she looks. It's like obviously this sport has had an impact on her development. She's 4'8". This sport has to have had an impact on her physical well-being.
Instagram, she posts her bathing suits and boyfriends too. She wears leotards with little rhinestone goats for greatest of all time.
Oh, they got fined for wearing shorts because they were supposed to wear bikini bottoms inside of volleyball. Okay, yeah.
She's dismantling unhealthy notions of what it takes to succeed and how a female champion is allowed to look. On the mat and off, she is redefining female power in sports. She withdrew though.
Yeah, that's true. Like, that is considered older in gymnastics. And so, I don't know, like, if 24 is considered old in gymnastics, like, maybe she really has some fucking shit. Maybe she really has an issue where she's, like, you know what I mean? Like, she's towards the end of her career or her life cycle, so maybe she's just, like, can't do it anymore. Maybe she's just, like, I don't know. There's a lot here, man. I will say, though, that, like, the gymnast sport in general seems dated. That seems like a dated sport. That seems like a dated event. Because there's really no way to make it less oppressive. Like, what could you possibly do to regulate gymnasts, like, not, you know, abusing the shit out of their bodies and still win? Because if we don't do it, then Russia's still going to do it, and then they're just going to win, and we're going to fault out. And it seems like one of those things where it's like this sport just seems to be inherently horrible for people's bodies and their mentalities.
I mean, maybe this column was written before she withdrew, but then they shouldn't have run the column because it's weird. In fact, they actually add a little addendum to the piece in which Lindsey Krause says, quote, USA Gymnastics announced on July 27th Biles had pulled out of the Olympic team because of a medical issue. Even without a gold medal, Biles has proved time and time again she remains the best ever. The Olympics may have outsized importance in the public eye, but ultimately, they're just another set of medals. Oh, okay. Meanwhile, over at the Washington Post, same thing from Alyssa Rosenberg, quote, the most dramatic image at the Tokyo Olympics thus far wasn't the spectacle of the opening ceremonies or a photo finish in the pool. Rather, it was the crooked line of Simone Biles' tightly sealed lips as she walks to the sidelines after a disappointing vault performance in the gymnastics team all-around competition. On Tuesday, Biles withdrew from that contest and has not yet decided whether she'll proceed with other events. It's a development that upends one of the biggest stories of the Games. The idea the Olympics pit the best against the best has always been more dream than reality, whether it's geopolitical competition, a pandemic, or simple bad luck that keeps some athletes out of competition. But every blow against that ideal of a perfect meritocracy is heartbreaking. Yet if anything good can come out of Biles' withdrawal and Naomi Osaka's early elimination from the women's tennis competition, it would be this. Maybe we fans can learn to embrace more expansive definitions of excellence and courage. You mean then winning? See, the thing that's appealing about sports is that there's a pretty obvious binary. You have winners and the losers. And it doesn't mean the losers are bad people, but they did lose, and that is how we judge whether somebody has won or lost. But we keep doing this in society now. It's like if a comedian isn't funny, we have to redefine our notion of what comedy is. If a gymnast that we want to treat as heroic pulls out of competition, then we have to redefine our notion of what winning is. How about we don't redefine any of those things? We just say that Simone Biles lost.
Who's making an argument for unfunny comedians being considered funny? I'm just confused.
Or that she withdrew. Why can't we just say that? And not redefine basic notions, what it means to win or lose.
How is this video 12 minutes long?
The tearing down of standards, because we like a person, is a very odd message in today's society, for sure.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of somebody who looks at participation trophies and goes, "That's wrong. You should only be encouraged when you win." Right? Because participation trophies are terrible. You shouldn't, like, if your child loses, they shouldn't be rewarded. Like, oh, well, you tried. but they should be encouraged to be like, you can win next. Like, it's okay that you lost. You did a great job. You can do better next time. There's a middle ground there. And so, like, Ben Shapiro seems to be taking this point. It's like, well, if you're not first, you're last. But, like, really, it's, like, okay to be second or third, and it's okay to do your best. And sometimes you need to measure success not by the way that you did compared to other people, but by the way that you did compared to yourself previously. You know?
Says Alyssa Rosenberg, rooting for Biles to dominate the Tokyo Olympics has long been about more than the U.S.'s medal count. Her greatness has redefined the very contours of her sport. In addition to her athletic excellence, Biles has hoisted heavy symbolic burdens onto her 4-foot, 8-inch frame. Biles has been a role model for black girls in a predominantly white sport. Her excellence has served as a rebuke to USA Gymnastics, which failed to protect her and her teammates from the predations of Larry Nassar. She moved from Nike to Athleta in search of a sponsor that would help her fund an independent exhibition tour. Despite the betrayal she has experienced and the exhaustion and pain she feels, according to Juliet Macker in the New York Times, quote, Biles has managed to set aside those feelings and harness the newfound power of an independent black woman who knows her worth and answers to no one.
Why does he need to put stank on black woman? You know? Like, Jesus Christ. You know, like if young, you know, and listen, I remember when I used to be a young black girl, so I know exactly what I'm talking about here, you know. No, but like you have a lot of young you have a lot of young girls that look at gymnastics or the gymnasts and they go, wow, they are really cool. And there's been like not a lot of black girls doing it. And they have a black girl who's like the best. And like, so young black women are like, wow, we can do. Like it has a profoundly positive impact on people who haven't seen like representation. For them to see that they're represented, especially when they're more than qualified. Because we're not talking about like, hey, let's just vote a black guy into office because we need a black guy. I'm not saying that we did that with Obama. I thought Obama was fine. He was great. You know, it's fine. My point is like, it's not like we forcefully inserted somebody into like the office just because they were black. This woman literally worked her way up, and other young black girls go like, oh, we actually can succeed. And it's like inspiring for them. And I find it weird that like, a conservative would put stank on that message when like the whole mentality is like pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and it's like, okay, this girl did and is showing other girls that they can, and now you're like, fuck her. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, you have to be consistent here. That's a positive thing for like, by the logic here, the black community, that they get like, oh look, we can do it, we actually can exist in this space, like we're showing the way. And he's got a stank on it. He's like, oh, black. Like he's just throwing up with the word, you know. He's not like, oh, it's just a black girl, black, like, you know what I mean? It's just like the way that he chooses to say the word.
The power of an independent black woman who knows her worth.
Black woman, like, dude, chill out a little bit.
And answers to no one. Again, I just don't. What? But she quit. I mean, like, that's okay. She's allowed, particularly if she was in danger. But why is that better? I just want, like, is that better than the alternative, her winning a gold? Is that better than the alternative, her sticking around and gutting it out? I don't know why. Alyssa Rosenberg concludes, sports may strike blows against ills like racism, and individuals can deliver biting reprimands to institutions. But athletes can't do the painful work of social change alone, and their only tools aren't perfectly executed vaults or dominant tennis sets. There can be greatness, too, in saying no. Why? I just don't. But why?
So, like, the even if you disagree with the perspective that there can be power in saying no, you should understand that the saying no is saying no to the sport in this context would be her saying yes to her mental health. And since we live in a society that doesn't value mental health, Simone Biles putting her career on the line to value mental health, that would be the inspiring message. You can disagree with that message, but like, you have to know that that message exists, right? Like, is that the problem here? Is that like Ben doesn't know that that message exists? Like, you know, it's always good to know what you're arguing against, because if you know that you're arguing against and you say my rule sets or you know my logic still doesn't agree with you, then it's like, okay, fair enough. But if you're just ignoring the actual argument and just be like, oh, that's silly, and you're just memeing it. I hate it when people meme arguments. You know, like they're just like, oh, that's dumb. It's like, you know, when you meme an argument instead of like actually engaging with it, you're kind of ignorant. Like, I find you stupid. You know, maybe he just doesn't understand that, but I feel like he should.
Well, it's not great to say no. It's mediocre to say no. End of story. Not great, not horrific, just mediocre.
That's Ben Shapiro on consent, by the way. Really shitty to say no. I'm sorry.
And again, if she withdrew for reasons other than danger, then it is bad, right? If she just withdrew because she wasn't up for it that day, then she let her teammates down. In the same way that any other person in a team sport lets their teammates down if they're quote unquote just not up for it that day. If it's aerial disorientation, different thing, because That'd be like Michael Jordan pulling out of a game in the NBA Finals because he actually has the flu. But here's the thing. If Michael Jordan had pulled out of the NBA Finals because he had the flu, then he wouldn't be a hero for doing that. He was a hero in that game, in the famous flu game, because Michael Jordan played through the flu. To be the hero, you have to overcome the obstacle. If the obstacle overcomes you, that doesn't make you a hero, and it doesn't make you a villain, it just makes you a human. End of story. I know what you're thinking. It's time to binge some more Ben Shapiro videos. Well,
It's not what I was thinking. What I was actually thinking before I watched the video is, God damn it, I'm trying to take a break from Ben Shapiro because it's just too much for me right now. Okay, let me sum up my perspective on this whole situation. Listen. The context of why she sat out, I think, is very important. At the end of the day, I think that if you make a promise, you should fulfill it, unless it was like physically dangerous to her, and it quite possibly could have been. With how like I would say articulate. It's not quite the word I'm looking for. Demanding, intricate is probably the word I'm looking for. With how intricate gymnastics is, it's quite possible that she could have gotten hurt with her head not in the game. And it could be a very positive thing to focus on your mental health, especially if it could put your physical health in jeopardy. However, I'm not getting that from this, so I'm not going to go with that too much. It's possible. We didn't get the context from listening to her talk. It doesn't really seem like she was particularly stressed or anything. But that could just be my ignorance. It's very possible that's my ignorance. Fundamentally, though, I feel that she should have went through with it. If she had sat out sooner, that's totally fine. As long as they could have replaced her, that would have been a really positive thing. There's no problem there. If you're the best at something, it doesn't mean that you have to do that something. And so, like, if she sat out earlier and she's like, I know I'm the best, but I can't do it, I would have been like, that's totally fine. But she didn't do that. And, like, that's where I would be like, okay, I find it to be kind of shitty. That's pretty much my perspective. But, like, it seems like the gymnastic field is very oppressive. And like I could understand why somebody would want to disengage from that. So, but also really when it comes down to it, what the fuck are we talking about this for? Like what the like I know this is stupid, but Mama got in the middle of things like, why are we talking about this? And that's a good point. Why the fuck are we talking about this for 12 minutes? Like my video is going to be longer. His video is 12 minutes. This felt like a 3 or 4 minute video. Like, listen, Simone Biles dropped out. Everybody's calling her a hero. I think that's silly. Here's why. Here's the counter argument. Okay, I got to go take a piss. Which is true. I actually have to go pee. So I'll be right back, guys. I got to go to the bathroom.